Hey everyone, Tony D back at the lamp here. I know I haven't done one of these videos in a while, mainly because they take about 5 times longer to upload for some reason. I guess it's because it's so much higher quality. And the other ones I'm, recording in my computer, and that's a lot quicker and they upload much faster. So to streamline things, I've sort of gravitated towards those, but I'm not against doing these. I just I usually have the computer in front of me and at least a little bit of data. But today I wanted to talk to you about something I think I've talked to you about in previous videos, but I don't think I have a dedicated video. And that's the idea of institutional momentum and the idea that some of what is pushing these various political ideologies is just the momentum, right? So when you look at, for instance, the Democrats and Antifa, and you see that the Antifa movement, organization, there's definitely more than an idea, has damaged them in the polls because the rioting damages them in the polls. Same thing with BLM, or do I repeat myself? And they've only just recently sort of cut off the spigot, and they're trying to make all that stuff sort of go away. And from a media standpoint, they kind of have made it going away. And now we're seeing some of the mainstream guys echo Biden's sentiments that, well, it's just an idea, it's really just an ideology, you're reading too much into it. And that's because they're trying to tamp it down and make it a non-factor in the coming weeks. But turning that narrative around is like turning an oil tanker around. It's not like turning a Mini Cooper around. Like a Mini Cooper will corner pretty good, right? It's got a, it's probably got a decent steering. Whereas an oil tanker is this big, heavy, massive thing. It takes a while. Has to get tons of room to like turn around. And that's the way, the bigger the institution is, that's closer to the way it turns around. So that's part of the factor here. And we're seeing these various narratives and political groups and sometimes corporate groups try to turn things around, but they've got such a big push, it's really hard. So the rumor a couple of weeks ago is that Disney is finally getting out of being woke, right? They're getting out of the woke business. They're trying to turn that switch off. And yet, after that rumor started hitting the internet, it was the NBA playoffs and they got crushed in the ratings, right? So they haven't been able to turn it around like that. Like they didn't run to the courts and immediately pull off all the Black Lives Matter stuff. They announced it would happen next year in anticipation of how long it would actually take them to sort of purge the NBA of most of its wokeness. And I think part of that has to do with their anticipation that the election will be over, Trump will be in office, and people are sick of the woke stuff, but that it'll definitely die after that. And if it's not going to die after that, they're going to help make it die because they've lost money. They've squeezed money out of the wokeness trend, but now they're losing money. Like the NBA drop was a significant loss. I mean, there's no way around that. You can't drop 40%, 46% of your ratings and call that a win in my book. I mean, you could call it a moral win if you're part of the woke cult, I guess. But in terms of money, no. And it's true, too, that most people don't follow all these various narratives, like some of you and me and the various other YouTubers. So they're slow to come around, too, right? So right now, I'm talking to Trump supporters who are worried about Trump's election victory, because the narrative being pushed is he's losing, he's losing, he's losing. And that's been pushed for a few weeks now. So it's finally sort of trickled down to some of the Trump supporters who are like, oh man, is he going to lose? The answer is no. Barring some huge thing that really, barring, I think, Trump having a massive medical problem, way more massive than beer virus, or some event that somehow exposes him, which that one is highly unlikely. Trump is too savvy to let that happen, in my view. And most of the stuff that has happened, I mean, I couldn't see a bigger event. I mean, he, when he was running the whole bus incident, grabbed him by the he weathered that and won anyway. And he was running against a woman. Now, a lot of women still sort of hate Trump just because of that quote. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I think, women are really reluctant to even consider Trump. But over the coming 4 years, so much has happened, and so much of it Trump has weathered or done reasonably well with, and you could look at the beer virus and say, oh my God, he screwed that up. Again, I don't want to go into the whole defense of that, but it's all a numbers game. It's just what's happening in New Jersey. They're spouting all these numbers and saying, be afraid. Well, you have to trust that those numbers are correct and they're not gaming the numbers in order to reach a conclusion. I don't trust those numbers at all. And we don't have all the numbers. We certainly don't have the numbers in China. The Chinese are completely lying about that. And those would be the comparable numbers, right? They have a billion some odd people. They have millions of infections, millions. I mean, that's math. It's mathematically impossible to look at the virus, its contagion rate. The truth is they just don't test. Why would they? They're communists. They don't want the numbers to go up. Okay, stop testing. Problem solved. When you can do that, yes, you can game the numbers however you like. I mean, you don't have to lie. You force the numbers not to go up. If they wanted their hospitalization to go down, they could just take patients out and shoot them and deny that they shot them, and good luck, proving that they did. Or they could just say, no, these people all have appendicitis. They all have food poisoning or whatever. So, but, you look at speaking of China, you look at the WHO, that's another example. Why did so many media organizations still report on the WHO and what it says? Despite the fact that all this horrible stuff has come out about how China is running it behind the scenes. The United States has pulled out of it. And, but because it's Trump doing it, and because they're so anxious to find a counter narrative on every issue, they're totally fine with it. But even so, it's hurting media credibility to even quote the WHO. And by the way, the WHO right now is saying that the lockdowns are actually hurting people. So go figure. Broken clock twice a day. But I think what we're experiencing with a lot of this is the institutional momentum of the Democratic Party and the globalists who have aligned with them, and that we're already in there. So the anti-Trumpers are, there, and it's all about money. They all have money in various more global consortiums, if you will. So, if you've got money in businesses that have factories in China, and you look at what Trump did to the Chinese trade situation, Of course you're angry about it. But most people don't. The average American just doesn't. The average American is more likely to have lost a job having it outsourced to China because they moved the factory there. And that's why Trump is so popular, especially in the middle of the country. And but the institutional momentum, to some extent, has gone the other way and will go the other way when Trump is reelected. It will become Trump is great. I know I'm making a, not all my predictions are good. I think Trump will win in a landslide, but I also think there's going to be a lot of cheating and, like Sticks and Hammer, who really drills down, Sticks and Hammer 666. You should watch his videos. He really drills down in the polls and knows them pretty well. He's saying that Trump is going to lose Michigan, but he's going to win. He has a good shot at picking up Nevada and Minnesota. Looks like Ohio's a lock, and Florida's pretty likely for Trump. But he could lose Pennsylvania. I don't know. When I went out to Pennsylvania in 2016, as soon as you leave Philadelphia, it is just a sea of Trump signs. So, yeah, I don't know. And on top of the fact that the only party that is bleeding support, in my view, seems to be the Democrats. Now, they've regained some of it to some extent, just having Biden in the seat. But, again, the institutional momentum, we had all these riots. We have this fleeing of every major city, and they're all Democrats. So imagine you were living in New York City, and within the last couple of months, you've just picked up your entire life and moved out of the city, and you've moved out of state. Where do you vote? In some states, you have to put in your paperwork fairly early, months in advance, to make sure you're a registered voter in that state, so you're going to get your ballot. And that's a Democrat moving to where? I mean, if they go to, I don't know, Florida, that's a Democrat moving to Florida. That's a Democratic vote moving to Florida. If it's a whole family, possibly 2 or 3. So the votes in New York have to be going down for the Democrats. They have to be. Because so many people, hundreds of thousands of people are leaving New York and LA and Chicago and all these places, and they're being spread out around the country. Ohio is a lock. So anyone, say from the Chicago area, that fled to Ohio, I mean, that's a net loss for the Democrats. They can't get around it. They've thrown blue votes into a state they can't possibly win, and they're losing votes in the state, Illinois, that they kind of have a lock on. But do they, when so many people have moved? And you just have to think, too, that so many people are in the process of moving. If you're in the process of moving, do you even care about voting? Your whole life is being uprooted. Maybe you have to get another job. Maybe you're going broke. Voting's the last thing you're thinking about. And if you're disgusted with Biden anyway and can't bring yourself to vote for Trump, it's just a no-brainer. We're not voting. Let's just get the hell out of here and try to rebuild our shattered lives. So, but institutional momentum is kind of saying that Biden is winning. And part of that is just the media pushing that. Pushing and pushing and pushing. And that, I think there's still some of that from 2016. It's this idea like, well, we have more people. We just were stupid last time. Well, this time we're going to be smart about it and we're going to win. That doesn't math out correctly. If things fell exactly as they did in 2016, Trump would win again because of the Electoral College. And the Democrats are pushing to remove it, but it ain't going to happen. And they would be stupid to do so because it would just be a matter of time before the Republicans would shift their their strategy so they could win it. Same thing with, Antifa and the riots. It took a while, but the institutes finally sort of shifted their strategy, and now they're getting on top of these guys. The FBI, and Tim Pool was talking about how they had people infiltrating these kidnappers that were after Whitmer. They were on top of all their posts and calls and whatnot. I think they are. It's the same thing for Antifa. They're on top of it totally. But for whatever reason, they're sitting on it. Now, maybe they're looking for a bigger October surprise, or maybe they're trying to round up all the members simultaneously. We still have a few weeks. Or maybe they just want to stretch it out so the FBI can say, well, this is a continuous thing. It might just be a next year thing for the FBI. They may just want to come out next year and say, well, we have a new strategy here, and here's all the Antifa guys we're going after, and here's all the guys we caught, and we'd like more money, please, because this is a very difficult situation, and we always need more money. So to put a bow on this, I don't know, I've touched on many topics. We can't expect things to change instantly, like a Mini Cooper changing direction. So that Trump is headed towards a loss. Again, it's the media. The media is the biggest institution out of all these that I've mentioned, except for the U.S. government. And, really, it'd be a toss-up. But, they haven't learned a thing since 2016. So they've weathered the first loss and told themselves after a few months, no, we were right, just to hear all their excuses. So they haven't changed at all, which means the situation in terms of voting hasn't really changed. They're just trying new gimmicks in order to win, like cheating, like the mail-in ballots, and so forth. And it may be behind the scenes that the DNC realizes it's going to lose, and they're attempting to play 4D chess to get on top of this for the next 4 years by undermining Trump by saying, well, you didn't really win. We'll never know who won. And they'll be finding, trucks full of ballots for the next 3 years going, aha, Biden would have won. Every other week, aha, Biden would have won. I think that's where it's headed. But I think what they failed to realize is they're losing money in this endeavor. It's a huge loss leader for them. I mean, you look at the ratings for all the major networks, they're just going down, 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 down. At some point, they're going to turn that boat around. Some of them will. Some of them, in desperation to make more money, will be forced to. They will say, screw this. Screw this all woke nonsense. Screw the Democrats. Let's join in with the Republicans and see if we can make money that way. And when that happens, the first organization in on that, and they start making crazy amounts of money, kind of like when they tried to boycott Goya and everybody ran out and bought Goya and, their sales went through the roof. Same thing with Chick-fil-A back in the day. They'll see an opportunity for money, and you'll see other, the next bottom guy go, we could really use that money. We took it on the chin here. Let's go in that direction. And it'll be slow, but I think it will happen because institutional momentum is tough to fight, but you can fight it. It just takes a long, long time. Anyhow, that's my thought.